Yo, what's up, guys? Bajheera here, bringing you another build update for my Diablo 4 Season 8 Hammer of the Ancients Earthquake Barbarian. This guy is a heavy hitter. He's been dusting Belial, crushing some pits on the precipice of Pit 100 solo, and have a lot of fun while we're at it. We've made a few adjustments to the build that I'd like to share with you guys. A couple things that we've learned from our theory crafting and our gaming. But all in all, things are progressing nicely. Still having a great time with this season, and definitely wanted to share with you guys some of the things that we've done with the guy, because he's handling business. He's making gains. I think this time around I might want to start with just some of the basics with the abilities. So Wrath of the Berserker is our ultimate. We're using that as a big damage buff, a source of unstoppable, a source of berserking, and you do pull enemies in with this when you have like 5 points in it. However, we're using a certain boss power combination that sometimes can throw that off, so you have to open with that sometimes in order to actually get that pull. So Rallying Cry is another source of unstoppable. It's also giving us a bunch of our life as Fortify, which is excellent, because that we do need a reliable source of Fortify, and it gives us a chunk of that, and it also gives us some nice Fortify every time we deal or take damage, which is very helpful as well. Challenging Shout, a big source of damage reduction, also a health buff, just to make us tankier, but also will buff the overpower damage if we get some overpowers, and we do. Ground Stomp is a CC for us. It's a Fury generator for us, but it also reduces the cooldown of our ultimate by 5 seconds per enemy damaged by Ground Stomp, so that's helpful in big packs. It'll reduce your cooldown of your ultimate a lot, but even just against the boss, it'll bring the CD down a little bit as well. Bash is our just basic attack, which we are still using a basic attack for a couple reasons. One, it's nice to have a little bit of rage generation. Two, it'll help us get some Fortify. And three, which is the big one, after critically striking 4 times with Bash using a 2-handed weapon, your next core or weapon mastery skill will overpower. So that means that we will guarantee a Hammer of the Ancients overpower every 4 bashes, because we have 100% crit chance. And overpowering with Hammer of the Ancients is important because that gives us a 40% more damage multiplier for 5 seconds afterwards. So pretty big deal. So the gameplay has a lot of buffs, some occasional stomps, some bashing in between of big Hammer of the Ancients to give you huge earthquake explosions. And we're getting those earthquake explosions from our gear. So I'm going to go into the gear real quick, because I think this helps sort of lay down some of the basics of how the build works. Maybe even a little bit more than looking at skills first, or our talents first. So our Ugly Bastard helmet, this is a big one. So it gives us Wrath of the Berserker cooldown, along with a couple little buffs to our Fury generation and damage reduction while we are Berserk. But the big thing, and why we use it, is the extra fire damage increase. 100% increased fire damage is a really big deal. So it's taking all of our damage, converting it to fire. As you can see, while berserking, your direct damage is converted to fire, and then it's buffing it by 2. So it's another big ×2, like, you know, more multiplier on your gear, which is huge. So that's why you want that one. Mantle of Mountain's Fury is kind of like the build enabling piece here. It's giving us armor. HotA damage doesn't really matter too much. Defensive stance is nice, so if I was going to remaster work this, I would definitely want to try to get chance for earthquakes to deal double damage to the max. But if you're going to go for 2 and 1, I would say 2 on chance for earthquakes to deal double damage, and then 1 on defensive stance over the armor. Don't really need the armor that bad. But I guess if you don't have enough armor, it's kind of nice to get there. And for the Ugly Bastard helmet, I would say 2 masterwork hits onto Wrath of Berserker, and then 1 into aggressive resistance if you have to take another one. But ideally 3 into Wrath of Berserker is great. But this one is going to give us all that stuff that we mentioned, as well as the key ingredient. Hammer of the Ancients also forms a seismic line that deals its damage and slows enemies' hits by it for 4 seconds. The big one is earthquakes it passes through explode for their total damage and are consumed. So this means that if it hits an earthquake, even if the earthquake has like 1 second left on it, it will deal the entire damage that the earthquake would have or did do over the course of its duration. So that's another reason why we are, spoiler alert, putting some earthquake duration on our weapons, even over heavy hitter in some situations. So that's pretty crazy. This is the big one. If you want to run this build, you need this piece. Fists of Fate. Fists of Fate, these are insane, by the way. They are giving us attack speed, crit chance, lucky hit chance, and on lucky hit, there is up to a 100% chance, 101% chance or whatever, to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. And to top it all off, your attacks randomly deal 1 to 290% of their normal damage. And my understanding now is that this is 1 to 290% of their normal damage on top of what, like, so it would either do its normal damage, I get, it does its normal damage, and then more. I thought this read as your attacks dealt, so 1% of its normal damage to 290, so it could deal less than 100% of its normal damage. But this is on top of it, so if that's the case, that's crazy. So these gloves are important for us getting enough crit chance, but we've masterworked them to do a very high lucky hit chance, and then upon lucky hit, it gives us vulnerability on the enemy. So this is like how we get vulnerable on our targets, which is crazy. So these are like doing really big damage for us, helping us get crit and attack speed, which is fine. But then this is like how we're applying vuln, which is huge. So that's nice. So we're using Tybalt's Will now. So we have all stats, which is great. Max life, which is great. Max resource. Doesn't do that much for us. But damage reduction while unstoppable is very good because we have a short cooldown on our Shout. And we have a short cooldown on our Wrath of the Berserker. So we're unstoppable frequently, which is giving us damage reduction while unstoppable. But it's also giving us damage increase while unstoppable. So it's another one of those more multipliers, one of the X's. It's like its own like way of increasing damage, and stacking those is pretty much how you get giga damage in this game. We also gain 50 of our primary resource while we Shout and while we cast Wrath of Berserker if we're not already unstoppable. So it's a great way of generating fury and taking less damage and doing more damage. So pretty nice there. Very nice. Now we have crafted ourselves up some boots. So the turbo endgame version of this build is going to be using Warcry boots. So you want greater affix on strength, and you want greater affix on Warcry, or I mean you could do greater affix on resistances too, and that would help get your resistances up. We are using our buddy right here to buff our resistances right now, but this is one of those things that you're going to want eventually is Warcry boots. And if you get the greater affix Warcry boots, then you can get the Warcry even higher, but this is fine for now. Again, for the Tybalt's Will, just a review. For these, you could, depending on what kind of Fist of Fate you have, I went ahead and double Masterworked Lucky Hit just to have a very high chance of getting that vulnerability up. But you could do crit, you could do attack speed, depending on what your build needs. But I went with this one. For Tybalt's Will, we are double Masterworking damage reduction while unstoppable. Ideally, you get triple there, and that's fine too. But these boots, we want to buff that Warcry up. Every point of Warcry is another 1.5% increased damage. And again, that's like its own thing, so that's another really big damage multiplier for us. And now that it's a legendary item, we're going to talk about Temper, and the ones that you want to do there are movement speed and earthquake size. We're relying on our boots and our necklace to give us earthquake size, and that's one of the places you can do it. So strength, res, and Warcry on boots are fantastic. For weapons, so the weapons are a big deal. Weapons are always a big deal. But I've got some different options, and I'm still doing some experimentation, but this is what we got cooking right now. So we've got strength, life, crit damage, and then damage while Wrath of the Berserker is active. So Wrath of the Berserker, again, is giving us a ton of damage activation, so you can see why having it on a short cooldown is important. We have Heavy Hitter on this. It triple crit, which is great. You do want to try to get your at least double masterwork to Heavy Hitter on this, and then anything else is good. Strength is fine. Crit damage is probably fine. Damage, well, Wrath of Berserker is probably fine. And this is one of those places where you're going to want a particular legendary power of Earthquakes. That's going to give you a ground stomp. It gives you an Earthquake, but also standing in Earthquakes give you more damage, and your Earthquakes just deal more damage as well. So this one's huge. And this one would definitely be great for me to have at max rank, which I don't, but we'll find one eventually, or we can buy one for a whole lot of gold. We will see. We will see. But that's what we got going on right here. I think locking in Heavy Hitter there is fine, but then this is where things start to get interesting. So part of this is because of my unique setup for the weapons that I have in particular, but there are 3 main masterworks that you're going to want on your weapons, right? Heavy Hitter is one of them. Chance to cast Earthquakes is one of them. And then Duration is one of them. And mixing and matching these is something I'm continuing to experiment with. but let me talk about it a little bit. Let me show you what you need before anything else. On one of these weapons, you're going to want damage while berserking, because there are certain breakpoint thresholds that you're going to want to get all of your paragon bonuses to be maximized. So damage while berserking here with strength, life, crit damage is great. And then we have vehement berserker on this, or sorry, vehement brawler. For us, it's berserker. Casting an ultimate skill increases your damage by 29% for 8 seconds, and gain an additional 2 ultimate skill ranks. So if you didn't want to only be doing more damage during your ultimate, you could put like conceited here, and that would be fine. But the additional 2 ranks of Wrath of Berserker bring the cooldown a little bit lower, just a teens. So that's why we're gaining the 2 additional ultimate ranks there and using that. Because ideally we have Wrath of Berserker up a lot, and then we're not only getting the 29% increased damage, but also getting the like nearly 500% increased damage, right? Which is big. This weapon, you want to have close damage on there, along with strength, life, crit damage. This one, I have duration. And another very important thing is you do want executioners on there. Executioners on a one-hander is fine, because the real big thing, in addition to having Earthquake deal more damage, is that you are having your Earthquake damage increased.
More loyal friends you'll not find.
Thanks, right here. You're going to have your Earthquake damage increased for every 100 strength you have up to 200%. Since that 200% is the key ingredient and it's capped, you can just put on a one-hander. It doesn't like double scale like it would on a two-hander. So I have duration on this weapon. Part of this is because I'm still trying to craft some new weapons and experimenting, but some combination of heavy hitter, chance to proc earthquakes, and earthquake duration is kind of what you want. If you want to do more AoE and have your earthquakes spreading around more and having more earthquakes activate all at once, obviously leaning into earthquake like spawn chance is great. But if you just want fewer earthquakes that hit harder, heavy hitter and duration are another option. So if I want to see the biggest numbers on my screen, then we're just going into duration and heavy hitter on these combos. So I was using this weapon before, where it was a pretty high chance for earthquakes to cast twice, and then I just made this weapon yesterday. I was looking for a higher chance of earthquakes to spawn, just by a little bit, but then it ended up giving me a max roll duration, very high close damage to enemies, or enemies to, damage to enemies that are close to you, and with the strength. And so I was like, okay, I guess we're using this now. I'm gonna give it a try today, so we'll see. It's all fine. It's just that we know from testing that duration does a lot of freaking damage. But what you need is close damage on this weapon. So close damage on these two, and then berserking damage on these two. And then if you put berserking damage on your ring, you should be pretty good to go on that. But anyway, that's what I've got cooking for the weapons, in addition to incendiary fissures. So if you want to run this build, you need Mantle of Mountain's Fury, you need earthquakes. The vehement brawler is okay, but you can do other stuff there too if you wanted to. But you need executioners and incendiary. These are the ones that are going to be buffing your earthquakes. This is making my earthquakes deal 120% increased damage, and their damage is converted to fire. So that's going to work with the Ugly Bastard Helm, even though Ugly Bastard Helm is going to make all our damage fire anyway. This just buffs the damage of the earthquakes by a lot. And we are going for the strength, life, crit damage on this, with close damage as well. Then some combination. Then this one should be like, you could do heavy hitter here if you wanted to, but earthquake duration seems to make it do more damage than heavy hitter adds. Just, you got to kind of sort of find a balance. I will say that the super giga pit pushers for this build last season apparently were playing either like heavy hitter or duration, and then chance to spawn earthquakes here. So if you guys want that information, I'm sure they've done a lot of the theory crafting and testing that I'm sort of in the middle of, and they probably know what's best. But for me, it's heavy hitter here because we got a good one. Chance to spawn earthquakes here is kind of like awkward, but it's fine for now. I just wanted to have the double master, like the double GA, and it's like I want that. I want that on both these weapons, so I'm just kind of messing with it. But some combination of that is good. You could do more chance to spawn earthquakes if you wanted more AoE, I think. More duration or heavy hitter for heavier hits is fine. That's what I've got going here. For ring, we've got strength, life, and resists. We need resists here just to bolster our resistances up a little bit. And we don't need as much crit because we're using the boss power for crit, spoiler alert. But we have Wrath of Berserker cooldown. We have damage on Berserking, like I mentioned, and we have the Bold Chieftains aspect here. That's important. So we have this Ring of Starless Skies. This is definitely not mandatory. It is nice. You are going to be able to squeeze out a little bit more damage than if you had the other like normal legendary aspect on there. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I am not sold on Ring of Starless Skies. I think it's pretty good, and maybe I'm trolling, but I feel like a strength, like a good strength, good life ring with like more resistances or something like that would be just fine if you put like Conceited on there. Conceited gives you 30% more damage. This one can give you 50%, but like I'm wondering if that strength that you have gives you the 20% damage that the Starless Skies would on top of like the strength plus Conceited would give you a similar amount of damage. So I need to test that out a little bit. We don't need the core skills. We're already good on Lucky Hit. It does help us get our crit, but we might have enough crit anyway with the boss power, and then attack speed is nice, but not that big of a deal. And then it gives you resist, but you can roll resist on a ring anyway. So I'm not 100% sold on the Ring of Starless Skies. Maybe I'm just a noob, but I think that some strength, life, resist ring like this, like another ring that looks like this with Wrath of the Berserker cooldown would probably be pretty sick. So just saying. Just saying. And you could even get more Wrath of the Berserker damage on one of these rings too. So I'm just saying. If you don't have a Starless Skies, don't worry. It may even be better not to use it. Just saying. That's what I'm using right now. And then we have Exploiters on this, which is very interesting. So we have, for your necklace, a nice greater affix % strength with life is what I have here. The juiciest of all would be % strength, heavy-handed, and some other talent like counter-offensive would be big for damage while fortified. I think even like I think it's called like Pit Brawler. One of these ones where you're gonna get offense and defense, right? Pit Fighter, you deal more damage to close and take less damage, which is really nice. Things like that would be cool. But right now I've just got strength, heavy-handed with life, which is fine. Chucking Wrath of the Berserker on here is great, and Earthquake size on here is great. And we have the damage while enemies, while enemies are unstoppable, you deal 68% increased damage to them. And we're able to do that because of the boss power. So we're actually using Torusk's Rage. Damaging a crowd control enemy, which includes like your challenging shout taunt, makes them and surrounding enemies unstoppable, but you gain 20% increased damage, attack speed, and movement speed for 3 seconds. So you're dealing a lot of extra damage to enemies that are unstoppable, and you're making them unstoppable by hitting them while they're under the effects of any CC. So that is a huge amount of damage, and that's what's going to allow you to hit for trillions with your HotA explosions, which is nuts. You're also able to use Cinderat's Flames to get 25% increased fire damage, basically, so huge damage % increases there. We're using this to get our crit all the way up to 100%, and then we're using this to make sure that we are generating a little bit of barrier from Fortify. So that's really, really nice. Very quickly can go over our skills, which we talked about a little bit. We're going into Bash, we're going into HotA, we're going into, after overpowering, you deal increased damage, because we are overpowering frequently with HotA. We are getting a little bit of attack, basic attack buffs our damage effect there. We are going a teeny bit into Thorns to proc Thorns Bleed, which is where we're getting our bleed effects. We are getting a little bit of increased duration on our shouts. We're getting a little bit of this. I don't think we even have, do we even have points in that? Yeah, we have like a 1 point in that. But this is mostly coming from our helmet, getting more damage reduction and more fury generation. While we're Berserk, we're getting a little bit of close damage gain, a little bit of damage reduction there. We're dealing more damage to healthy and injured enemies. We are generating a little bit of Fortify from this, which I don't even know if I really need these points. The Fortify generation is okay, but I think I might just chuck those points in this. Oh, that's already maxed out. Okay, I will not chuck those points in this. We'll put those points just back in there. We are dealing more damage when we have Fortify above 50% of our health. We are taking additional damage reduction while fortified and healing for 5% of our maximum life every second while fortified, which is sweet. Have max points at heavy hitter. A lot of these are coming from our weapons from heavy hitter ranks. We're taking full points in heavy handed. Could consider doing more damage to overpowers, but we're only really overpowering with HotA, which is not doing much damage for us. What's doing damage is earthquakes. Our bludgeoning weapon skills deal more damage if the enemy's stunned or vulnerable. Why don't we have points in that? It says skills using bludgeoning weapons, but that's the weird thing about skills. It's like, I don't know if Earthquake is a skill or not, so that's why I'm not using that, I think. So Wrath of Berserker is our ult, right? And then we have our Unconstrained as our big one. So we got to go over this quickly. But this is also going to be the mobalytics page. So if you guys need a detailed breakdown of the mobalytics profile, that should be in the description for you. We are in the process of filling out life here. But a couple things to mention. We are taking revenge in the first slot so that we are getting just an extra 15% damage on enemies that we're attacking, right? Just from them having, you know, thorns, because they're going to hit us, they're going to get thorns, and they're going to take a lot more damage as a result. So we are going for the Blood Rage node here, and in the Blood Rage tree, we're going with Rumble, because it has 115 strength for us to pick up in the radius, so it's going to be massive increases to our Earthquake damage. We're also dealing increased damage to bosses and CC'd enemies for each active Earthquake up, which is this right here is why I'm thinking you may still want to take extra chance to proc Earthquakes. It's nice to have like one pile of Earthquakes that you detonate for like trillions of damage, but on a boss it is kind of nice to have Earthquakes spread around, so you're always getting this full maximum Rumble thing. As long as, like, these are some things to think about with the build. Right here, we're going for Force of Nature for this massive increased damage to our Earthquakes. Depending on how much close damage we have, that's why we want to max our close damage. And this right here is why we want to max, or not max, but get enough damage while berserking and damage while close, right? We're doing Martial here to help reduce the CDs of all of our stuff from our shouts, of which we have 3. Which I guess I didn't go over my runes, I forgot about that. So the way we're proccing Earthquakes, this is kind of a big deal. We're using Lith while we're standing still, Earthquakes proc, and then we're getting Warcry from just periodically over time. We will store energy. Whenever we use a skill, it will give us that offering, that energy, and then once we get 600 energy or offering, it will proc a Warcry for us. So that's how we're getting that other Warcry, and that's where we're still talented into Warcry. So that's part of the, part of the 3-shout combo that's going to be buffing our CDR from Martial up there. So now we go over to the Decimator tree, where we have socketed into it good old Ire, where we're just getting a little bit more damage while berserking and taking less damage from elites, which is nice. Then we're pathing over here into the Weapons Master tree, where we have Challengers socketed in there for more damage to elites, and this is just a nice way to get a whole lot of stats. So with the remaining points that we have, we're going to be going into life. You also want to make sure that you're grabbing these all resist nodes, because you're a little bit tight on resists. So you got to make sure you grab those resists. I think there's more resists somewhere over here that we got. Yeah, we got these resists too. You're going to want to grab those because you're a little tight on resists. And we are a little bit tight on time, so we don't have time to go blast some pits, but we've been doing that on stream quite a bit. So you can check any of the streams that we've done recently with this build. We did post a level 96 run that was pretty chill. And I'm looking forward to hopefully getting 100 plus as we continue to sort of tinker with, just the main things I'm tinkering with are like the weapon stuff. Just seeing if we can, use some different combinations to see what feels best with Earthquake duration, spawning more Earthquakes, and heavy hitter combos. But the Wrath of Berserker here, the damage while berserking here, the close damage here is enough to get your stuff. That's the main thing. And of course, with the rest of your gems, you're using reds in your armor. You're using your weapons to grab your rune combos. You're doing extra crit damage in your one-handers, and then we're getting lots of resists in our rings and stuff. So that's where we're at right now with the build, though, guys. It has been fun. There's definitely some more things to tinker with, some things to configure, and some gains to make. But I gotta run. I will see you guys later on stream. Usually probably around 4 to 5 p.m. PST start time on the weekends, and we go till pretty late these days. So if you're up, we'll see you there. Thanks for watching. Hope this helps you guys get your HotA Barbarian either started or progressed. And we'll be doing the same thing live on stream later today. We'll see you guys then. Peace.